Hi, everyone. Welcome to another ABRN AMI training presentation. Today's title is Communication Styles and Communicating Effectively. So during this presentation, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different things. It's like the onion, and we're going to peel the layers back, but it's how we're going to communicate more effectively. It's about you. It's about what's being presented. It's about knowing your audience. It's about your delivery style. Most importantly, it's going to be about the message. So we're going to have to choose what to say, how to say it, and when it should be said. Do I keep it as a team conversation, or do I keep it as an individual conversation? So with that being said, we're going to look at the different styles of delivery. The reason we do that is, have you ever had a circumstance where you feel like you're talking to everybody, but somebody's not listening? So the team's just not getting what you're saying to them. Have you ever felt like you're saying all the right things, but the results aren't showing that the things that you've communicated are actually being followed? So then that begs the question, are you an effective communicator? With that being said, what's your communication style? So we're going to concentrate on these things because all of these have an impact to productivity with our teams. So there's going to be 5 basic styles that we're going to talk about, but these can cause folks to react differently. If I'm confronting a person who is maybe a little bit upset about something, how do I communicate to them? How do I recognize if I'm not being assertive enough in a circumstance? Maybe I'm being overly assertive. So we're going to talk about all those things, because if I'm not behaving properly as I'm delivering the message is going to be lost. So as I look at my own communication style, make it easier so that folks understand if you have shortcomings, how do I deal with those? Okay. Help decrease the anxiety and stress that comes from communicating to folks and you haven't prepared properly and you can't clearly define the things that you're trying to have them understand through your presentation. We want to help you identify areas that you can improve on. These will in turn help you with your business relationships and just overall strengthening your relationships in general. So the 5 types of communication styles that we're going to talk about here are going to be assertive communication, aggressive communication, passive communication, passive aggressive communication, and then manipulative communication. And I know folks are going to say, I don't understand what all those things are, but as you start to look at the descriptions of these, you'll say, I've seen people, deliver information that way before. So with assertive communication, the person who's delivering the information is going to be pretty honest. They're going to be fairly direct. So that means I'm going to tell you, this is what we've got to do. Here's why we have to do it. But then I get into it's self-enhancing. So I may, as the person who's delivering the information, may want you to feel that it's me that's making this happen. Okay. This breeds a little bit more self-confidence in your communication skills, but it allows you to be empathetic to emotion. So if somebody in your team is having a little bit of a concern one way or the other, it allows you to kind of bring that into your presentation as well. So this one is assertive. It is what it says. It means that we're going to be pretty straightforward in what we're going to deliver. Then you have that aggressive communication. Inappropriately honest. Boy, this gets right to the point, and it doesn't cut anyone any slack. It's very direct, can be very expressive, sometimes can feel like from the team perspective that they're being attacked, that they're being blamed, that the team leader is just trying to control things. And again, the self-enhancing piece of this, but now it's at the expense of others. So this one is a little, this is the when the fuse gets lit on this one, it can create a lot of things in the team that may be unintended consequences. Passive communication. Now, this is a person who, when they communicate, they kind of like to be a little bit more laid back. They can get a little bit emotional in how they deliver the information, but it's honest. Okay. Sometimes getting to the point is in an indirect way. And it actually feels like the person is a little bit inhibited. So self-denying, I'm not really trying to make you feel bad about this, but you're going to feel bad about this result. It does allow for blaming, but it always comes and it's always followed up apologetically. I'm apologizing for blaming you, but that's just the way it is. So that passive person, it's like the passive aggressive. I've got the person that either gets it right in your face, or I have the person that takes the very slow, methodical approach, seems a little inhibited. That's where we would have that passive communicator. Then you get that passive aggressive, the Jekyll and Hyde, if you will. It's really emotionally dishonest. They're not really going to say what the concern is. They're going to make sure that the concern goes back to the team. Even if the team leader has erred in the process that's going to be utilized by the team, they always put it back on the team versus the team leader. Again, that's the indirect way of getting to that point. Self-denying at first, but then they'll go in, and if it gets too kind of patchy in the conversation, they will self-rationalize and maybe give you some information about, well, I was part of this too. But again, self-enhancing, but it's going to be at the expense of others. Everything is going to be just like when we have that aggressive person, they're going to try and put it on somebody else rather than taking any of the information or the process non-compliances to the team leader. Manipulative communication. This is one we see quite a bit, folks. It's an influencing question. So this is the one where you're trying to influence somebody's behavior. You're not doing it through facts. You're not doing it through process compliance. You're not doing it through setting of expectations. You're doing it because I said so. It can get very scheming. It's very calculated. Shrewd comes into it's a great word in here because they're calculating exactly how they want this approach to be so that the person that's being delivered the message doesn't have much control over anything about it. So typically the person who's communicating this way, they're going to be pretty cunning. They're going to think all these things through. They're going to make sure that it can't come back to them. So it's controlling others to that leader's advantage. So the different ways of communicating in the workplace, it's real important for us to understand, because all of those the 5 different ways of communicating all get rolled up into different kinds of communication that we use in business. I can have individual communication where I'm dealing with somebody on a one-on-one. I can have team communication where I'm dealing with my entire team all at the same time. Or I can have electronic communication, which is one we're going to talk about a little bit more, but this is one we've got to be very careful about. The ... and the exclamation points and all those things that we do in electronic communication. We've got to be very careful how we're delivering that message. Then, of course, with electronic, unless you're using Zoom, the body language piece of this, we don't get to see that very much. But you can read a lot about how that leader's delivering their message by the body language. And I would say on the other side of that coin, as the person who is basically giving the information to the team, I can tell how the team feels about the information by the raised eyebrows, the looking up at the ceiling, maybe the puff of air that comes out when the person's feeling that they're just not getting it. The folded arms, that body language is something that the leader needs to read to make sure that we're, getting the right message from our team. And that goes in again into the nonverbals. The body language and the nonverbals are really important because body positioning, things like that are going to be things that your team is going to read, and they're going to make assumptions off of what they see. So we've got to be very cautious in how we cover that, those different things with our body. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But communicating it's so important for us to look at getting input from the team. So if I have a concept without the input of the team, it really makes it isolates the team leader. So what we want to do is we want to be more inclusive in that conversation. One of the things that's involved there is active listening. So it's not just about, okay, I'm hearing what the person says. No, I've got to hear it. It's got to register. I've got to, make notes as to what I think, the person's saying. And if I'm not, maybe I'm a little confused or a little gray area as to what that person's telling me, I may want to go ahead and reiterate to them another question back to them. Is this what I heard you say? That's where active listening comes in. So I want to recognize the body language. Again, that's going to tell me maybe that person doesn't like to talk, but when I'm watching their body movements, they're telling me something. They're telling me that there's a discomfort there. So as I go through this, I want to stay focused as a leader and restate what I hear. Again, active listening and then the restating are kind of hand in hand as you go through this. What I'm trying to do is build personal trust. The more open I am in communicating with my team, the more that trust builds. So there's going to be individual preferences that my team has. There's going to be individual preferences that I have, but we've got to kind of meld those together so that we can start building the trust between the team and the team leader, the team manager, and so on. So the interactions sometimes are going to be individual. As we have these folks in our team, we want to make sure that I'm communicating clearly to everyone. I need to be open and honest in the discussions I'm having with them. Remember that person who's going to kind of keep things back so that all at once I can throw it out and say, well, it was your fault. You didn't perform properly. No, I want to be open and honest. I want to remain calm. I want to affirm, reaffirm what the positions are, what the goals are, what the experiences should be in the process. Then if I have folks that maybe I've got 1 of 10 that are underperforming, I want to provide constructive feedback to them. Nothing wrong with giving constructive feedback. Even if it seems like you're kind of picking on that one person because they're underperforming. No, it's not. That's not the way we deliver the message. The way we deliver the message is, these are some things that you could do a little bit better. And if you feel that I could be of help in making your performance better, let me know. Again, I'm going to actively listen to what they say. And, it's nice to do a coaching form when somebody's having a concern. And the 3 questions that are on there are going to be really important, 3 statements that they're going to make. What are the 3 things that management can do to help you perform better? And again, we're listening to that. And again, the interaction, it's going to be with individuals, but we've got to keep it in the context of, I have to have the team all working together. The electronic communication between team members, that one can get a little stressful. Okay, so as a team leader, you want that open door policy. Any of my team members have a concern, bring it to me. Let's talk it through. Maybe it's something we can de-escalate real quick, or maybe it's something we want to pull in and it will help everyone. So again, using what we call proactive communication. Don't wait until the thing festers and blows up. Let's interact as we're going through these processes. And then remember, we're trying to build trust. So one of the things that's I think should be a regular occurrence with most teams, how about social interactions with your team? That helps folks understand really kind of where your head's at. And so then they understand that, you know, when you're making decisions on behalf of the company, those are decisions that are made that everyone should embrace because it makes for the greater good of the company. But scheduling regular meetings is hugely important. You can't wait till something, again, festers to the point of, you know, kind of going off track. You need to make sure that you're having regular meetings so that you can do, you know, preemptive, if you will, coaching of your folks to make sure that things don't get sidetracked. So if you're going to do something like that and it's an electronic format, set up your guidelines for use. I can tell you in my experiences, I just use a form. I let people put their questions, concerns on the form. Then if there are things that we need to talk about, I just, you know, call them and do a one-on-one. And that way we get all of the information that they're trying to communicate. But as a leader, and this is one that's usually hard for leaders, but be aware of your body language when you're communicating, and then watch others. You have to become a master of silence. You've got a question for the group, ask your question, stop, let them answer you. Sometimes the silence is deafening, but they'll get it after a while. They'll understand when I ask that question and I don't say anymore, I'm soliciting an answer from you. I need you to tell me what the answer to the question is. I can watch for subtle clues. Remember, not everybody in your team is going to be an effective communicator. So I may have to say, you know, as I go through the process, okay, Jimmy over there, I notice when things aren't going his way, he kind of scrunches his forehead, his eyebrows go down, and he looks off to the right. So I know my team after a while, I can look for those subtle cues from them that they're having either good or a concern, or maybe they're finding something in the process good, but they don't want to speak. So allow for the processing of that information. One of the important things for a leader to do is have clear eye contact with the folks that you're communicating with. That doesn't mean you're drilling into them, but there's a 30-70 rule that, you know, as you're communicating information, you want to make sure that you're having about 30% eye contact with those folks, especially if it's one person that you're addressing the question. But then 70% of the time when they're speaking to you, you want to make sure that you're keeping eye contact. This is real important because that makes them feel like you're really interested in the points that they're making. That is communication. What that does for your team members, it builds trust with the management staff who's having that conversation with them. So again, things that we're going to look for: gestures, body orientation. If they're silent the whole time, that sometimes can be an issue. Then look at space and distance. But the one I want to caution everybody on is using humor in a business environment. What I think is funny may not be what my team members think is funny. So I've got to be very cautious about using humor, because I may turn somebody off and then all of a sudden my trust with them, because I use a piece of humor that maybe they didn't think is funny, my trust then gets destroyed. Then I got to go back through that whole building process with them again. So again, if you're going to use humor, make sure that you're real comfortable that everybody that you're using that humor with is going to see it the same way. Because if not, you could be creating further communication issues with your team. So how does this communication work? It's an exchange of information. So I'm going to create a process. I'm going to have my team give some input on how we're creating that process. I want to deliver that information to them so that when we're ready to execute, everyone has a good feeling for what is going to be required. I'm looking for team interaction. So if one person feels that maybe something should be done a different way, maybe the other feels a different way, all that should be fairly collaborative in building our process, because we're going to set goals. We've got to identify what the goal orientation is. And I may have a team that's made up of different levels of performers. So we need to know what the goals are for the specific performance levels that we're going to be working with. And then how do I roll this all up? We're going to share this information. I'm going to let everybody know, well, Jim and Joe over here are level 1 employees. Their work goes up to number 5 on our list. Then Sarah and Sam, they're 5 through 10. And so everyone has a clear identification of what the goals are, and the information is shared throughout the team. So this collaborative environment that we're trying to build, we have to have a common purpose. The common purpose is typically going to be what's the best solution to get the best results for the company. We have to establish trust in each other as a team. Clarifying the roles helps do that, because now no one can assume what the other person's supposed to do. We have a clear definition of what the roles and responsibilities are. We want to communicate openly. I never want that team to feel like they can't speak. If someone does speak and it's maybe done in a way that's not productive, I'm probably going to talk to that person in a one-on-one and just counsel them on how to communicate more effectively. But we want open communication. We want to balance the team's focus. We want to make sure that everyone is looking at pulling in the same direction at whatever level their roles are. So in building this effective team, all ideas are valuable. There's not a stupid sentence that's given from any of your team members. We've got to take each thing that is said, we've got to bring it in, we've got to process it. And if we feel that it's something we can use, I'm going to give them a pat on the back in front of the group and say, you know, we pulled this piece of information in, we kind of churned it around, and this is really going to add to our process. They want you to share with them when they are doing things that are important to your processes and procedures. So you've got to be aware of unspoken feelings. If they feel like they've contributed and you don't recognize it, that's not a good thing. If they do contribute and you do recognize it, it makes them feel much better about working through the processes. You need to be, as a leader, a harmonizing influence. So maybe we have different levels of how folks are contributing. Everybody's contributing. I want to make sure everybody gets the accolades from that. Be clear when communicating to them what you're communicating. And also be careful to clarify any directives so that they know these are actual directives that they've got to meet. There is a measurement attached to them, and it's a process that they're going to need to follow. So to the degree that you work with your team, It's going to be really important. Your approach when you're sharing goals and the aspirations of the company with them, your approach is going to be extremely important. The task orientation, as we said earlier, it's got to be crystal clear so that everyone knows what they're responsible for. The goal setting, try to bring them in, your teammates, on what the goal set should be. The reason we do that is if we do come up with a concern about reaching the goal, I can go back to them and say, okay, we all work together to formulate this goal. We're identifying an opportunity. What do we need to do, for continuous improvement? What do we need to do to change either the goal or the process so that we can meet the goal that the company's looking for? We have to have clear, concise strategies, and then our implementation processes have to be very crisp. I use something in almost every class that I teach where we talk about we have to be consistent, we have to have repeatable processes. Then the most important part is we have to have the discipline to continually do them over and over again. So again, that's the implementation that we're looking for. We've got to have truth in our decision making. If something's not going to work, I'm going to tell my team, listen, I'd really like to do that, but we've tried this in the past and it's not something that's been effective. So we're going to take a different approach. We're going to try it. We're going to let everybody measure it. Full transparency to the team. That gives us what we call the effective collaboration. It allows everyone to contribute. And the big thing for a team leader, no passing the buck. The buck stops with the team leader. If the team doesn't function as it should, it goes back to the team leader, and the team leader has to clarify whether it's role specific, whether it's task specific, whether it's process specific. They're the ones that are responsible for the implementation. So we've got to make sure that they take the accountability for it. So delivering the message the right way is going to be hugely important to the team leader. You need to be clear. Everything needs to be upfront. You need to be able to kind of tie any peripheral things that have to get done in back to that, we'll call it the anchor goal. And then we got to make a plan, because the plan is what gets executed. So with that being said, don't use complicated language. Those $10 words are great, but if they don't add value to the conversation and the goal setting, why use them? Complex words, they're not required in most of these things we're doing. Think of it as an SOP. We've got probably a one-page document of what we're trying to do. Don't make it more complex than it has to be. Organize what you need to cover, kind of like an agenda. These are the items that we need to cover. Here are the results that we're looking for. Here is the process that we feel will get us to those goals. Here's what recognition we'll have if all the goals are achieved. Keep it really simple. Don't sugarcoat bad performance. If your team is underperforming, or even if you are underperforming as a leader, don't sugarcoat it. Deal with the facts and get it taken care of. Avoid those extremes that come with trying to sugarcoat things. Rely on the facts. And then with your team, give them all the details. Much more harmony when we do that than if we try to, as we said in those different examples of how we're going to communicate. We don't want to sugarcoat things. We don't want to make folks think that, oh, you know what, boss says it's okay if we slack off a little bit. No, we don't want to do that. We want to be very consistent in our deliverables. We look at our processes typically in how's the process set up now? Well, as we're team building and going through this goal setting process, we want to actually define what the future should look like. So we define the future, We define if we have performance gaps, we got to do root cause analysis. We've got to find out where those performance gaps are. They've got to be corrected. If they're not corrected, what do? We continue to have a bad plan. So set strategic development objectives, communicate purpose and objectives, and then focus on, again, continuous improvement. And all that essentially means is we're going through the processes. Maybe we're 60% to the goal, but we need to get to 100%. What can we do ongoing to improve the process to get to the 100%? Then we need to unplug what isn't working, plug in what the continuous improvement process would be. If we see an improvement, then we continue on with it. So it's important for us to focus on finding what the continuous improvement, and this could be, maybe we're going along with a process and we get a new tool, new piece of equipment, or maybe I get a new person on the team. That person has a specialty that we didn't have before, and it's making things better for us. That's continuous improvement. So keep that in mind as you're developing this execution process with your team. Try and keep the plan short and concise. Know your audience, write the plan using language that your audience will understand. If you're not dealing with a bunch of PhDs, why are you writing like the people are a bunch of PhDs? Keep the writing at the level that your folks are going to grab and say, I can do this. So keep that in mind. You don't want to overthink your audience. You want to make sure that your audience has what they need to get the job done. So those goals and objectives that are established go right back to what are the things that I need the team to do? What are the objectives that the company needs us to reach? And don't let anything that comes to you about this, don't be intimidated by that. We've used our team. We've used the brain trust that we have in our team. We've established what the goals should be. We've got our plan in place. I'm not going to let anyone come in and interject things that don't belong there because we've got a plan. So keep that in mind. In kind of putting this all together, we want to have a restatement of the facts. We want to make sure that we have a buy-in from the team. We've established our agreed upon action plans. Then our actions basically are shown in our results and that the results are positive. If you have the folks that you want to do one-on-one meetings with, set regular meeting times. I know I have it in my personal calendar. I have the 4 folks that report directly to me. We have a meeting time set up each week. Now, there's going to be times like this week I was traveling. I may have to reset the time, but it's okay as long as we communicate to the individuals that are affected. Determine a meeting place. I happen to like Zoom, works pretty good, but you can do these face-to-face. Just remember, we want to decide what we're going to talk about. And if we need any kind of materials, whether it's performance results, or maybe the person that I'm bringing into that meeting has results that they want to talk about, make sure we have all those materials at the ready for the discussion. Again, when we're looking at the one-on-ones, for the tasks that employee is performing, what's their progress? Are they doing well? Do they have opportunities? Those are the things that we're going to talk about. We want to confirm that they are in alignment with the workplace developments, that maybe we've got something new that's required. Maybe it's a new task, maybe it's a new process. Let's make sure that those folks are aligned with those new things so that it doesn't come as a surprise to anyone that there's a new measurement that we have to follow. If there are obstacles that the employee might be facing, and I'll tell you, these can be anything from a workplace issue, a product or a tool issue, or it could be something personal. We've got to make sure that we try to help them eliminate any of those obstacles. That's going to get you, again, the trust factor is really important here, especially when it comes to any kind of personal issues that they might have. So we've got to be, ready to help them through those things. It's, as a team leader, you're responsible for your team, and that includes all its individual members. When you are conducting those meetings, this is important. Start on time. If you have questions that need to be answered, ask those immediately. If you've had information that you've discussed in previous meetings that continue to plague their performance, make sure that you kind of call back to those other meetings where you've communicated that information. Say, do you remember on August 15th we discussed this? Well, we're running into the same problem. I need you to help me understand why that's happening, and is there anything we can do to help you make changes there? It's a non-inflammatory way of presenting the information. It allows the person who's in your team to give you some honest feedback, and that way we can look at the progress and the challenges they're having. If you have a morale issue, or if there's something about an interpersonal relationship within the team, that's a time to talk about those things when it's individual and not public. Acknowledge strengths with the person. If they've done something well, let them know. If they've had triumphs, they beat a target, let them know. Those things really help in team building and building with the leader, that trust component that we talked about. Any new expectations also have to be discussed. They're thoroughly vetted, and we're able to make sure that we can move through those expectations. This is basically just a check-in sheet that you would use. It's what's on the previous page, but you leave space that you can write in information. So that way, the next time I meet with somebody, I can put the date up on the upper right. I can say, okay, these are the things we discussed last time. How are we doing? And let them give you some honest feedback about how they feel they're doing against any potential challenges that they have. Okay, so as we go through this, as you're trying to initiate this with your folks, these are some key points that we want you to keep in mind. Developing the plan and then executing, it is a team effort. None of these things that you're going to work through with your team, you can do by yourself. If you could, you wouldn't have a team, okay? So we want to make sure that let them share in the development of things that we're trying to do, and also let them share in the successes that you have. It's not about you, it's about the team. Be sure that your team is always aligned with the business objectives. If you feel like somebody's starting to go off the side of the road, we need to get them back on the road again. So those conversations that we'll have to make sure that they basically are aligned with everything that we're trying to achieve for the company, it's going to be hugely important to them, their well-being, their performance, their potential advancement. All of those things are really important. We've got to share that with them so that they feel, and this is all about communication. These are things that you're going to help them with so that they feel really good about what they're doing so that we advance the business. Feedback and clarity are going to be crucial in developing your business plan. And so that includes the execution by the individuals. Remember to keep it simple. The more complex you make it, the harder it is for them to achieve the goals, because in most cases, if it's real complex, there's a lack of understanding in some of the things that they're going to be required to do. Take your time, take it slow, keep it simple. Be sure that there are measurements and a validation process. A couple of things that I want to talk to you about here. If I have a goal, I have to have a clear measurement, a defined measurement that we're going to try and reach. With that being said, there has to be a way to validate that that measurement was actually reached. So whether you have management reports, performance reports on the individual, those are the kinds of things that we would want to bring into the discussion, share with our folks so that they have a clear understanding of, yeah, the boss is measuring me on this. Here is my result. Here's what I need to do to improve on that result. Clearly communicate your implementation processes. What most folks find when they're leading a team, implementation, especially of new strategies, is the most difficult thing to do because you're sometimes entering uncharted territory. So we've got to make sure that everything is clearly defined so that as the folks go through the process, they're meeting the obligations of the process. So this tells you as a leader, when you're setting a new process in place and going through implementation, you need to think through any alternative that may come from the implementation so that we can do a quick reaction to, okay, we made a decision, maybe we've got to hone it in a little bit better. What are the things that we can do to make that happen? And that's got to be a fairly rapid transition. And that's what we call continuous improvement. Always have a follow-up process in place. In the event something goes terribly wrong, we've got to make sure that we've got a way to, a backup plan, if you will. The unfortunate things that can happen sometimes with employees and their family. What's our backup plan? I lose an employee for COVID. That's a great one for 10 days or 15 days. What's my backup plan? So we've got to look at the contingency plans for operating our team as well. But all of this happens through really robust communication with everyone so that there are no questions when the time comes what the plan is and how the plan should be followed. Okay, and with that being said, that's our presentation for today. Again, my name is Keith Manich. I am the Vice President at the Automotive Training Institute, responsible for the collision division. My phone number is 301-575-9191. You can call me anytime, ask questions. The only thing I would ask you to do, make sure you leave me some details about who you are and how to get back in contact with you. My email address is the same at the bottom there. If you leave me an email, I typically try and get everything called back within about 24 hours. So I'll do my best to hold to that. But thank you very much for attending the presentation. Again, questions or concerns, let us know. And I look forward to seeing you next time.